"Get those things out of here! This is a court of law, not a circus! I demand they be removed! Silence! Everyone will be seated! Your request, Mr. Sterling, is denied. The court will hear the respondent." That was the moment the billionaire realized his meticulously planned life, his empire, his reputation, his freedom was not just threatened, but already sinking. He came to court armed with certified medical proof of his sterility, ready to brand his wife an adulterer and strip her of every dime. He never imagined the exhausted woman he tried to erase was carrying a secret far darker than his own. The biggest lie wasn't Amelia's, it was the one resting on his mistress's lap. Today, Judge Cole was about to shatter 2 marriages, expose a multi-million-dollar corporate coup, and deliver a verdict known only as hard karma. The heir in courtroom 3B of the Los Angeles Superior Court was worth more than a modest home in the suburbs. It was a sterile, refrigerated atmosphere, smelling faintly of expensive leather, polished brass, and the cold, unyielding scent of financial ambition. This was the jurisdiction of the ultra-rich, a place where multi-million-dollar problems were solved, or created, with the stroke of a pen. Presiding over this high-stakes arena was Judge Cassandra Cole, a woman whose platinum hair and sharp steel-grey gaze were known to dismantle high-powered attorneys before they'd even finished their opening statements. She was the final gatekeeper of truth in a city built on artifice. On the petitioner's side sat Victor Sterling, CEO of Sterling Global Developments, a man who didn't just wear a suit, he used it as armor. He was the definition of predatory wealth, radiating impatient entitlement. His $24,000 Patek Philippe watch caught the fluorescent light as he tapped his fingers on the mahogany table, eager to finalize the humiliating execution of his marriage. Beside him, his counsel, attorney Theodore "Teddy" Finch, a man whose smooth, almost reptilian features belied his firm's prestigious reputation, arranged his files with predatory precision. Finch was known for his ruthlessly efficient summary judgments, specializing in making uncomfortable truths disappear behind mountains of legal jargon. In the front row of the gallery, resting just behind Victor, was Serafina Vance. She was the reason for this dissolution, a vision of calculated elegance in a cream-colored Chanel suit. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe, perfect chignon, highlighting her razor-sharp cheekbones. Serafina was, ironically, a high-powered attorney herself from the rival firm Thorne & Associates. But today, she played the role of the supportive, wronged partner, the one who could offer Victor the fresh start he craved. Her hand rested with deliberate, almost theatrical maternal grace on the small, barely there swell of her stomach. She was 3 months pregnant, and her entire posture screamed silent victory. This child, she believed, was her golden ticket, the proof of her legitimacy and the key to Victor Sterling's entire empire. On the respondent's side, there was only one person, Elara Sterling. She was not in rags. That would have been too convenient, too theatrical for the court to believe. Instead, she was poor in the way only immense, suffocating wealth can define it. Her simple navy blue dress was clean but obviously worn, purchased years ago before the chasm in her marriage had fully opened. Her shoes were practical, comfortable flats. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, harshly highlighting the dark, exhausted circles under her eyes. A testament to months of sleepless nights nursing newborn twins and fighting a financial war she was ill-equipped to win. Elara clutched a worn, dog-eared manila envelope in her lap, her only shield in this sterile, imposing room. She had no lawyer. All her attempts to secure counsel had been met with polite but firm refusals. Victor's influence was simply too vast. "All rise," the bailiff announced, his voice reverberating off the marble walls. Judge Cole entered, settling onto the bench. The proceedings began with the practiced, expensive empathy of Atter Finch. "Your Honor, we are here today for a simple dissolution of marriage. My client, Mr. Sterling, has filed with great pain for divorce on the grounds of grievous infidelity and catastrophic breach of the marital contract. Finch paused, allowing the weighty words to hang in the silent air. Serafina, the supportive partner, delicately dabbed at a non-existent tear with a silk handkerchief, her performance flawless. While Mr. Sterling, Finch continued, adjusting his tie, would be well within his rights to sue for emotional and reputational damages, he is, in a profound act of generosity, seeking only a summary judgment. He wishes to dissolve this union, provide Mrs. Sterling with a statutory minimum severance, and move on with his life. He asks for nothing, save for his freedom from a marriage built on deceit. Judge Cole stared, her face impassive, leaning slightly into her microphone. Deceit, Mr. Finch. Those are strong words. I assume you have proof. We do, Your Honor. Irrefutable proof. Finch picked up a thick, sealed document. We present Exhibit A, a certified, notarized medical declaration from the famed Beverly Hills Fertility Clinic, signed by the esteemed Dr. Alistair Rourke. This document proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that my client, Mr. Victor Sterling, is medically and permanently sterile and has been for several years. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room, instantly shattering the sterile calm. It was the moment of the bomb drop. Serafina looked directly at Elara, her lip curling into a small, venomous smile. Checkmate. The respondent, Mrs. Sterling, Finch said, gesturing toward Elara as if she were a piece of particularly unpleasant furniture, has claimed her recent conception resulted in twins, a boy and a girl. This is, of course, a biological impossibility, a desperate, fraudulent attempt to secure an unjust financial payout. Finch concluded, his voice ringing with self-righteous conviction. Therefore, we ask the court to nullify any and all claims Mrs. Sterling might make on the Sterling estate based on this profound, devastating act of fraud. Judge Cole turned her gaze to Elara. Mrs. Sterling, you are here without counsel. Do you have a response to this very serious medically backed allegation? Elara's voice was quiet, nearly lost in the vast room, but it did not tremble. Yes, Your Honor. She stood, clutching her envelope. He's lying. Attorney Finch let out an exasperated, high-pitched sigh, a noise intended to convey Elara's sheer absurdity. Lying? Madam, this is a sworn affidavit from one of the top specialists in the country. Are you accusing Dr. Rourke of perjury? No, Elara said, her eyes fixed on the judge, a flicker of something ancient and terrible entering her gaze. I'm accusing him of lying. Those children, my children, they are his. Victor Sterling finally spoke, his voice a low, dangerous growl. She's delusional. She knows I'm sterile. We've known for years. Your Honor, he interjected forcefully, this is a desperate delay tactic. The respondent has no evidence, no counsel, no case. We move for a default judgment. Judge Cole looked back at Elara, her expression softening infinitesimally, the slightest hint of sympathy mixing with her judicial rigor. Mrs. Sterling, you must present a legal argument. A simple "he's lying" will not suffice in the face of medical evidence. I have my own evidence, Elara said, holding up the manila envelope. Her voice cracked with the reality of her predicament. But I didn't know how to submit it. He froze all our assets. I have $42 in my bank account. I couldn't hire a lawyer. I couldn't even afford to file a motion. Pathetic, Victor muttered under his breath, leaning back in his chair with bored contempt. Serafina smirked, a quick flash of triumph. Attorney Finch smiled, sensing the kill. Your Honor, she has nothing. We rest our case, Finch declared, snapping his file shut. The judge looked as if she were about to speak, perhaps to grant the motion and end the hearing. And then the grand courtroom doors creaked open. The sound, a heavy, low groan of old, well-oiled oak, made every head in the room turn. Framed in the doorway was a young woman in light blue medical scrubs, looking terrified and profoundly out of place. It was Elara's younger sister, Chloe Hayes. She wasn't alone. Chloe was pushing a large, cumbersome, clearly second-hand double stroller. The squeak of a bad wheel echoed like a tortured cry in the cavernous room as she hesitantly pushed it across the threshold and up the aisle. The courtroom silence thickened, becoming heavy, suffocating, and absolute. Inside the stroller, wrapped in simple faded cotton blankets, were two sleeping infants. Victor Sterling went rigid. His face, which had been a mask of bored arrogance, flushed a deep, violent crimson. He shot halfway up from his chair. "What is this?" he seethed, the sound cutting across the air like a razor. Serafina shrieked, a sharp, sudden, high-pitched noise that shattered the decorum. "Your Honor, this is an outrage. This is harassment. She's brought props." Victor finally found his voice, turning his rage upon the judge herself. "Get those things out of here. This is a court of law, not a daycare. This is a circus. I demand they be removed." Attorney Finch was instantly at his side, desperately trying to salvage his composure and his case. "Your Honor, I must strenuously object. The respondent is turning this hearing into a media stunt. This is a blatant attempt to manipulate the court and cause my client emotional distress." Judge Cole slammed her gavel. The sharp, deafening crack silenced the room instantly. "Silence!" Her voice was a whip, lashing through the thick air. "Everyone will be seated. Now." Victor and Finch immediately collapsed back into their chairs. Serafina, trembling with indignant fury, slowly lowered herself. Judge Cole looked at Chloe, who was frozen in place beside Elara's table, her face white with fear. "You may remain," the judge said, her voice dropping back to a calm, authoritative monotone. "Park the stroller beside your sister." This small act of judicial validation seemed to drain the blood from Victor's face. He looked at Judge Cole as if seeing her for the first time, not as a facilitator of his desires, but as a dangerous, unpredictable opponent. Elara placed a trembling hand on the old stroller's handle. She looked at her husband, her voice infused with a sudden, new, rock-hard strength. "They are not things, Victor. They are not props. They are your son and your daughter, Leo and Luna Sterling." Victor let out a short, barking laugh, devoid of humor, laced with contempt. "My children, Elara, have you lost your mind? We have proof. Certified, irrefutable. You can't just manifest paternity by walking into a courtroom. It's pathetic." Serafina leaned forward, whispering just loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "So desperate, it's truly sad. She needs psychiatric help." Elara ignored them both. Her gaze was locked on Judge Cole. "Your Honor," Elara said, her voice finding a new, harder edge, "I told you I had evidence. I have it here." She held up the worn manila envelope. Attorney Finch scoffed. "And what precisely is in that envelope, Mrs. Sterling? A greeting card? A horoscope? A mother's intuition? It will not stand against a notarized medical declaration from the Beverly Hills Fertility Clinic." "Bailiff," Judge Cole said, cutting off the lawyer mid-sentence, "retrieve the document from Mrs. Sterling." The bailiff took the simple envelope from Elara's hand and passed it to the judge. The courtroom held its breath. Victor watched, a flicker of genuine, corrosive uncertainty entering his eyes for the first time. What could she possibly have? Judge Cole slid her finger under the flap and opened the envelope. She pulled out a single folded sheath of papers. She began to read. The courtroom watched her face, waiting. Her perfectly arched eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. She read the document again, clearing her throat almost in disbelief. She looked down at the twins who were stirring slightly in the stroller, then at Victor, then back at the document. "Mr. Finch," the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Your Honor," Finch replied, sensing a shift in the wind, a sudden cold breeze in the otherwise sterile air. You submitted Exhibit A, the sterility report from Dr. Alistair Rourke. The date on this report is October 15th of last year. That is correct, Your Honour, Finch said, puffing his chest, trying to sound ironclad. And Mrs. Sterling, the judge continued, has submitted this. She held up the paper. A prenatal paternity test from Genesis Diagnostics, dated February 10th of last year, 9 months before your test, Mr. Sterling. The judge let the silence stretch, forcing the timeline to sink in. This test, she said, her eyes boring into Victor, states that there is a 99.9999% probability that Victor Sterling is the biological father of the twins. Pandemonium. The courtroom exploded into a low roar of chatter and shocked gasps. At-Iron Finch was instantly on his feet, his reptilian smoothness gone, his face a mottled mask of panic. Objection! Objection! It's inadmissible. Foundation, chain of custody, speculation, he stammered, throwing legal jargon against the wall to see what would stick. Victor was chalk white, the blood draining from his face as if yanked by a plug. She faked it. That's impossible. She stole my DNA. It's fabricated. She's a con artist. Elara finally turned to look at him, her eyes flashing with a year's worth of stored pain, fear, and gaslighted fury. I didn't steal it, Victor, she said, her voice ringing clear across the stunned room. I used your electric toothbrush, the one you threw in the trash when you bought your new gold-plated one. I sent it in with my own blood sample when I was 10 weeks pregnant. It's called the toothbrush protocol. She looked back at the judge. I knew, Your Honour. I knew he would try something like this. He grew cold the moment I told him I was pregnant. He started accusing me. He said I was trapping him. I knew I had to protect myself. I had to protect them. Finch seized on the toothbrush detail, trying desperately to regain control of the narrative. A toothbrush. Your Honour, this is junk science. It's a novelty kit. It has no legal standing. Our exhibit is a medical procedure conducted in a sterile environment, signed, sealed, and notarized. You must throw this out. Judge Cole held up a perfectly manicured hand, stopping him dead. Calm yourself, Mr. Finch. You are incorrect. A DNA test from a certified lab like Genesis Diagnostics is absolutely admissible, regardless of how the sample was obtained, as long as the chain of custody from the lab is sound. And this report, she tapped the paper, is fully certified. She fixed Finch with a hard stare. So we find ourselves with a paradox. We have two contradictory and legally admissible pieces of evidence. One says Mr. Sterling is the father. The other says he cannot be. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. One of these documents, gentlemen, is a lie. Victor was shaking now, his fury warring with a new, crippling panic. Hers is the lie. Mine is from a doctor. I want her sanctioned. I want her charged with perjury for submitting a faked document. Serafina, for the first time, looked truly nervous. Her perfectly manicured hand was no longer resting lovingly on her stomach. It was gripping the wooden gallery railing so hard her knuckles were white. Her entire plan, their plan, was contingent on Victor's sterility being an established, undisputed fact. This paternity test, regardless of the method, complicated everything. A serious matter indeed, Judge Cole mused, looking at the two documents laid out before her. A direct conflict of facts, a test from Genesis Diagnostics versus a report from Dr. Rourke's clinic. She looked directly at Victor Sterling, her eyes like chips of glacial ice. Unless, Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice dropping, you are lying about which document is true. Perhaps you aren't sterile. Perhaps you bribed Dr. Rourke to create a fraudulent report to escape your marital duties. I did not, Victor blustered, sweat breaking out on his brow. But the accusation hung in the air. Bribing a specialist was exactly the kind of thing people believed he would do. Or, the judge continued, her voice silky smooth, perhaps both documents are true. Finch and Victor exchanged a confused look. Your Honour, Finch said slowly. "That's not possible." "Oh, but it is, Mr. Finch," Judge Cole corrected him. "And that is where the real story is, the story your client so desperately tried to conceal." She held up the 2 reports. "Look at the dates. They are the key. Mrs. Sterling's paternity test, February 10th. The twins were conceived in late January. Mr. Sterling's sterility test, October 15th. The twins were born in September." She let the timeline sink in, allowing the math to torture Victor's high-functioning, business-trained mind. "This means," the judge said, her voice ringing with judicial clarity, "Mr. Sterling was fertile in February and sterile in October." Dead silence. Victor's face crumpled. He understood in that microsecond of horrifying clarity exactly where this was going. He had been so clever, so sure of his infallible plan, that he had missed the one detail that would destroy him. Finch, still processing, frantically flipped through his own file. But, Your Honor, Mr. Sterling's affidavit, it clearly states he has been sterile for years." "Exactly, Mr. Finch," Judge Cole said, her voice turning to steel. "Mr. Sterling, you just committed perjury in my courtroom. You signed a sworn affidavit stating you have been sterile for years when your own submitted evidence shows you were only tested last October. You lied under oath." This was the moment. The audible click of the trap closing. Victor Sterling, the untouchable CEO, was cornered. It was a misstatement," he stammered, his eyes darting between the judge and his lawyer. "A turn of phrase. I meant I am sterile now. I assumed it had been for years." "You assumed?" Judge Cole's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "You built your entire case, your claim of infidelity, your attempt to leave your wife and 2 newborn children destitute, on an assumption. You filed a false report under penalty of perjury. In this state, Mr. Sterling, that is a felony." Finch, seeing his sizable retainer evaporating before his eyes, tried frantically to do damage control. "Your Honor, a simple clerical error in the affidavit's wording. My client was emotionally distressed by his wife's betrayal. We can amend the filing." "Save it, Mr. Finch," Judge Cole snapped. "You'd be wise to stop talking because, you see, it gets infinitely worse for your client." She turned to her clerk. "When I reviewed the preliminary filings this morning, I saw this glaring discrepancy in the dates. It made me curious." Victor's skin crawled. He knew what curious meant in Judge Cole's court. "So I took the liberty of subpoenaing the full medical file from Dr. Alistair Rourke's clinic, not just the convenient 1-page summary you provided, Mr. Finch." Finch went a shade of pale that clashed violently with his expensive suit. Victor looked as if he was going to be physically sick, right there on the polished floor. "And Dr. Rourke's private sealed notes," the judge continued, reading from a new file that was now on the bench, "are deeply illuminating. Mr. Sterling, you didn't just wake up sterile in October. You were diagnosed with a severe, rapid onset condition. Specifically," she read from the file, "catastrophic bilateral testicular failure due to an aggressive, unmanaged varicocele you apparently ignored for more than a decade, despite medical advice." She looked up, her gaze pinning Victor to his chair. Dr. Rourke's notes state, and I quote, "Patient's sperm viability was plummeting. He was, in my professional opinion, in the final days, possibly hours, of his reproductive viability when he claims to have last been with his wife." The test in October merely confirmed what had already concluded: total and permanent sterility. Judge Cole then turned the full force of her attention to Elara, her expression softening for the first time. "Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice gentle, "it seems your twins weren't just children. They were a 1-in-a-billion miracle, conceived in the absolute final window of your husband's fertility." Elara's hands flew to her mouth, and a ragged sob tore from her throat. It wasn't a sob of sadness, but of pure, profound vindication. All those months he had gaslighted her, calling her a liar, making her doubt her own reality. And all this time, the truth was this. The courtroom was buzzing. He framed her. Someone whispered loudly. Victor just stared, his multi-billion-dollar empire, his reputation, his entire sense of self crumbling. He was the father. He knew he was fertile when they were conceived. He knew he was sterile now, and he had still tried to brand her an adulterer to get out of paying for his own children. His entire case, his entire narrative of being the wronged husband, had just been officially, publicly, and humiliatingly obliterated. All eyes were on Victor. All eyes except for Elara's. She was watching Serafina. Serafina Vance was standing, her face a mask of chalky disbelief and incandescent rage. She was not looking at Victor. She was looking at Judge Cole. This is a violation," she shrieked, her voice cracking, all pretense of the graceful, supportive partner gone. "A gross violation of privacy. You can't release a person's private medical data like that." Judge Cole leveled a gaze at her. "I can, Ms. Vance, when it is central to a case of perjury and fraudulent claims in my courtroom. You are an officer of the court. You, of all people, should know that. Sit down." "No," Serafina screamed. He told me he was sterile. He said it was impossible. He promised me." Her mind was spinning frantically. She wasn't angry for Victor. She was angry at him, her entire plan, her future. And then, like a freight train in a tunnel, the second, more horrifying realization hit her. It was so palpable the entire courtroom saw the moment it landed. If Victor became permanently sterile last October, her pregnancy, she had proudly claimed 3 months pregnant. It was now November. Her hand, which had been gripping the railing, flew to her stomach. It was not a loving maternal caress. It was a gesture of pure, abject horror. She slowly turned her head, her eyes wide, to look at Victor. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. Victor, finally understanding the new, immediate source of her panic, looked back at her, his expression desperate. "Serafina, wait, don't." "You knew!" Serafina Vance screamed, a sound of pure, animalistic rage that echoed off the marble walls. "You knew you were sterile, and you let me believe." Attorney Finch, his own career now circling the drain, weakly pleaded, "Your Honor, order! Please, order!" Serafina laughed, a high hysterical sound. "He lied to me. He's sterile. He's been sterile for a year, and he's... She stopped, choking on her own words. But it was too late. Everyone in the room, the judge, the reporters, the clerks, and Elara, had done the simple, devastating math. Judge Cole leaned into her microphone. "Ms. Vance, are you admitting in open court that your current pregnancy is not Mr. Sterling's?" Serafina had completely, totally lost control. She was hyperventilating, tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. He tricked me. He said he wanted a family," he said. It was in that moment that Elara, her voice quiet but carrying across the stunned silence, spoke. "He didn't trick you, Serafina. You tricked yourself." That was all it took. The quiet truth pushed the other woman over the edge. "You!" Serafina shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Elara. You poor, pathetic, you planned this, you!" She lunged with a guttural scream, trying to get past the wooden railing, her hands clawed, aiming for Elara's face. "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" The bailiffs were on her in an instant, grabbing her arms. She thrashed, her $5,000 Chanel suit completely rumpled, her perfect chignon unraveling. It's his, she screamed, even as her eyes, wild with panic, told the truth. She knew it wasn't, and now the entire world knew it too. The courtroom became a vacuum, all sound and air sucked out by Serafina's primal scream and subsequent pathetic collapse. She was now a heap of ruined Chanel held upright by two stone-faced bailiffs. Her gasping sobs were the only sound. Victor sat paralyzed, a breathing statue of a man, his empire and his ego shattered by the revelation of his children, followed by the revelation of her child. Attai Finch, sensing the legal blast radius, was already packing his belongings, his movements swift and silent, like a rat deserting a sinking ship. Judge Cole looked at the scene with utter, frozen disdain. She waited for the bailiffs to get Serafina settled back into the gallery, a prisoner now, rather than a guest. "Well," the judge said, her voice a cold, sharp instrument, "this has been illuminating." She turned her full, unadulterated focus on Victor. "Mr. Sterling, this court has heard more than enough. Your case is a shambles, built on a foundation of malicious lies. Your petition for divorce on the grounds of infidelity is, needless to say, summarily denied." Victor swayed slightly. He had already processed the financial loss, but the public, irrevocable failure of his self-concept was a physical blow. "This court validates Mrs. Sterling's paternity test. The twins, Leo and Luna, are unequivocally yours. Your sworn affidavit, Exhibit A, is a fraudulent document. I am referring this matter, along with my full case notes and a transcript of this hearing, to the District Attorney's Office for immediate charges of felony perjury." "Wait." The voice was quiet, but it sliced through the judge's ruling like a diamond through glass. Everyone, the judge, the bailiffs, the weeping Serafina, the catatonic Victor, turned. Elara Sterling was standing. Her hands were no longer trembling. Her face, though tear-streaked, was now set with a terrible, cold clarity. "Your Honor," Elara said, her voice gaining strength. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but you are not done. You have found the truth about the twins. You have found the truth about her pregnancy." She flicked her hand toward Serafina in a gesture of utter dismissal. "But you have not found the whole truth. You haven't found the real secret." Judge Cole raised an eyebrow. This was unexpected. "Mrs. Sterling, I believe this court has sufficient grounds for judgment. Ms. Vance's personal issues are not directly relevant to the dissolution of your marriage." "They are, Your Honor," Elara insisted. "They are, because it wasn't just about him." She pointed at Victor. "And it wasn't just about me. It was about everything. His assets, his company." Elara turned to face the room, her voice rising in volume and power. She wasn't just his mistress. She was a corporate spy, and she was about to steal his entire company, not just from me, from him. Victor slowly lifted his head. His eyes were blank, unfocused. "What? What are you talking about, spy?" Serafina's sobbing hitched. A new, sharp terror cut through her hysterics. "No, no, she's lying. She's just trying to... Elara ignored her and looked directly at Victor, her gaze pitiless. "You were so angry, so determined to destroy me. You froze my bank accounts. You cancelled my credit cards. You took my car. You left me with nothing. But in your all-consuming, arrogant rage, you forgot one simple little thing." She held up her old phone. "You forgot that I set up the family's cloud storage account 5 years ago, the one I pay $15 a month for from my old private account you didn't know about. And you forgot that when you gave her that brand new top-of-the-line iPad Pro, you signed her into our family account." The color, which had been gone from Serafina's face, somehow drained even further. She looked physically ill, swaying where she stood. "Every note she took, every photo she saved, and every single iMessage she sent has been backing up to my cloud for 6 months." No, that's not possible. The backup was off." "You only turned it off last week, Serafina," Elara said calmly. "After the most important messages had already been saved. I was looking for old photos of Leo and Luna, and I found these." She turned the phone to the clerk. "Your Honor, I present Exhibit C, a complete time-stamped log of messages between Serafina Vance and..." Elara paused, letting the name hang in the air, a sword of Damocles suspended over Victor's head. A Mr. Arthur Thorne. If the previous revelations were explosions, this was a nuclear bomb. Victor shot to his feet, his executive chair crashing backward onto the polished floor. "Thorne!" he roared. "Arthur Thorne!" The name was venom in the Los Angeles business community. He was the head of Thorne and Associates, Victor's former partner, his bitterest rival, the man who had tried to stage a hostile takeover of Sterling Global Developments 3 years prior. The man Victor hated more than anyone on Earth. "She's lying," Victor yelled, his mind unable to process this new dimension of betrayal. "It's a fake. She photoshopped it. Tell them, Serafina. Tell them it's a lie." Serafina was silent, her body rigid with terror. "They're not faked, Victor," Elara said, her voice echoing in the stunned room. "Let me read them for you. Let me read them for the court." She scrolled. October 30th, 8:15 p.m. from Serafina to Arthur Thorne. "Problem. The idiot, that's you, Victor, just told me he's sterile. The doctor confirmed it today. The Elara problem is solved, but our plan is dead. He'll never leave her for me if I can't give him an heir. All this work for nothing." Victor was shaking his head, a low, guttural moan escaping his throat. "No, no, no," Elara continued. Reply from Arthur Thorne. 8:17 p.m. "Dead? Don't be stupid, Serafina. This isn't a problem. This is an opportunity. He's an arrogant fool. He wants a legacy more than he wants a wife. He'll believe in a miracle. You just need to provide one. Get it done." Elara swiped. Serafina to Arthur Thorne. 10:30 p.m. "But how? I need to be sure. Who?" Arthur to Serafina. 10:31 p.m. "It has to be mine. It secures the lineage. It keeps it in the family, so to speak. I'll book you a flight to Geneva. Meet me Friday. We'll solidify our partnership." Elara looked up at Victor. His face was a mask of pure, uncomprehending horror. He looked as if he'd been shot. The infidelity was one thing, but this was a calculated biological conspiracy with his greatest enemy. And then Elara read the best part. Just 2 weeks ago, Serafina to Arthur Thorne. "It worked. I'm pregnant. I told him he's crying, Arthur, literally weeping. He's calling me his savior. He's pathetic. I almost feel sorry for him." Elara paused, then read the final damning message. Arthur to Serafina. "Don't. Pity is for the weak. Now the real work begins. He's filing for divorce. Once you're married, you'll be on the board. We'll start moving assets to the new shell corp in the Caymans. Within 2 years, Sterling Global is ours, and he'll be left holding his miracle baby." It was all there, the entire breathtakingly cynical plot. Corporate espionage, a baby trap, a complete betrayal, not just of a wife, but of the fool who had replaced her. Serafina finally broke. She lunged forward, grasping the wooden railing, her eyes wild. "No, he's lying. Arthur is... He threatened me. He made me. He said he'd ruin my career. Victor, baby, you have to believe me. I did it. I did it for us. He was going to... She was babbling, but it was far too late. Victor Sterling stood perfectly still. The silence from him was more terrifying than his initial rage. He was shaking, not with fear, but with a new, volcanic and apocalyptic fury. He slowly, very slowly turned his head. He looked at Serafina. He saw her, really saw her, for the first time. Not as a prize, not as a victim, but as the architect of his total annihilation. "You," he whispered, his voice a low, strangled rasp. "You were going to give my company, my father's company, to Arthur Thorne." His voice cracked on the name. The betrayal wasn't the sex. It wasn't the lie. It was the business. It was the legacy. "You were going to pass his bastard off as my son," Victor finished. "Victor, please." Serafina wept, seeing the look in his eyes. "I love you. he roared, a sound of pure primal agony and rage. He lunged, not at Elara, not at the judge, but at Serafina. "I'll kill you! I'll kill you both!" The two large bailiffs had to work together, hauling Victor back and slamming him onto his knees to prevent him from reaching his former lover. The silence that fell over the courtroom was a living thing, heavy, suffocating, and absolute. The text messages Elara had read from her phone hung in the air, an indictment more powerful than any legal argument. Every person in the room, the judge, the clerks, the stunned bailiffs, was processing the sheer, layered audacity of the conspiracy. Victor Sterling, now restrained on his knees, was no longer looking at Elara or the judge. His entire being was focused on Serafina. His face, which had been pale with panic, was slowly suffused with a dark venous crimson. His breathing was a low, ragged hiss. This betrayal, he understood, wasn't a matter of biology or love. This was business. This was a coup. Serafina, on the other hand, was shrinking. The color had drained from her face, leaving behind a waxy, terrifying pallor. She was staring at Elara's phone as if it were a bomb. "No," she whispered, the sound barely audible. "No, she faked them. She faked those texts just like she faked that junk science DNA test. She's a liar. Tell them, Victor, tell them." Elara didn't flinch. She simply turned her phone toward the clerk's desk. "I have the device logs, Your Honor, the cloud sync metadata with IP addresses and timestamps, all originating from Ms. Vance's devices at the Sterling penthouse. She can't deny it. It's all here." This cold, factual statement seemed to sever the last thread holding Victor's lawyer. Attaché Theodore Finch, who had been frozen in a half-crouch beside his incapacitated client, stood up, his face a mask of professional horror. He snapped his briefcase shut. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling with a lawyer's righteous, career-saving fear. In light of this extraordinary and new information, which my client, Mr. Sterling, clearly and maliciously withheld from his own counsel, I must formally move to withdraw as counsel, effective immediately. I have been compromised. My firm has been compromised. We cannot be party to this level of multifaceted fraud." Judge Cole didn't even blink. "Motion granted, Mr. Finch. You are dismissed. I would strongly advise you to find your own counsel, as it is highly likely you will be called as a material witness in several upcoming investigations." Finch looked at Victor with undisguised contempt, then all but fled the courtroom, his expensive shoes clicking in a rapid, panicked retreat. Victor Holloway was now in every conceivable way alone. He stood up, the movement slow, deliberate, like an apex predator uncoiling. "You," he growled, his voice a low vibration of pure hatred. He was still looking only at Serafina. "You with Thorne? Arthur Thorne? You let him. You were going to take my company, and give it to him." The sheer, personal nature of the betrayal, his greatest business rival, had eclipsed everything else. Serafina, seeing her last protector was now her most immediate threat, snapped. All the poise, the Chanel suit elegance, vanished, replaced by a raw, gutter-level panic. "You deserved it," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You deserve it. You're a fool, Victor, a weak, arrogant, pathetic fool. You lied to me. You used me. You told me you were sterile. You used me to get rid of her. You said we'd have everything." "I am sterile," Victor roared, then stopped, his own words trapping him. Serafina laughed, a high, terrible, hysterical sound. "Exactly. You are. You knew it. You knew it for a year. And you let me get pregnant with... She choked on the words, unable to finish the confession. "With whose baby, Serafina?" Victor bellowed, taking a step toward the gallery. "Whose is it? Is it Thorne's? Is that it? You were going to pass Arthur Thorne's bastard off as my heir. Enough!" Judge Cole's voice was no longer a whip. It was a cannon. She slammed the gavel once, twice, 3 times, the crack, 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 echoing like gunshots. This is not a soap opera. This is a court of law, and I have just heard confessions to multiple compounding felonies. Bailiffs, secure Miss Vance. She is a flight risk. Place her in custody. 2 large bailiffs moved instantly, pulling a suddenly unresisting Serafina from the gallery. Her fight was gone. She was limp, sobbing, her high-fashion armor now just a rumpled, tear-stained costume. "No, please," she wept as they put her hands behind her back. "It was Arthur. It was all Arthur. He made me. He's powerful. He threatened my career. He threatened me." Judge Cole watched, her face carved from stone. "Miss Vance, you had no career. You had a scheme. Take her away." Serafina was led weeping through a side door. The heavy click of the lock seemed to seal her fate. The courtroom was silent again, save for the sound of Victor Sterling's ragged, agonizing breathing. Judge Cole let the silence stretch. Then she fixed her gaze on Victor. "Mr. Sterling." He turned, dazed, to the bench. "You are, in one sense," the judge said, her voice a cold, academic monotone, "the victim of a stunning and calculated betrayal. It seems Miss Vance and your rival, Mr. Thorne, were partners in more ways than one. You have every right, and I'm sure every inclination, to pursue civil damages against them for what is by any measure a massive conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. The evidence provided by Mrs. Sterling will be invaluable to you in that pursuit." Victor nodded, a flicker of hope in his eyes. He saw a lifeline. He was the victim. "Yes, Your Honor, that's right. I am the victim here. I was blinded by her. Did she—" "Do not!" The judge's voice snapped, cutting him off so sharply he flinched. "Interrupt me again, because while you may be a victim, you are not the only victim. In this room, in this case, you are without question the perpetrator." Victor's face fell. "Let us review," Judge Cole said, lacing her fingers. "You petitioned this court for divorce, claiming infidelity. To support this claim, you submit a sworn affidavit, Exhibit A, a document you knew to be a lie. You committed a felony right here in my courtroom. You knew you were fertile when these twins were conceived. You knew your sterility was a recent development. You saw a convenient coincidence of biology, and you decided to weaponize it." She leaned forward. "You tried to brand your wife, the mother of your newborn children, an adulterer. You gaslighted her for months. You isolated her. You terrorized her. You froze her assets. You left a woman who had just undergone a high-risk delivery of twins with $42. You did this not out of emotional distress, as your departed lawyer so pathetically claimed. You did this out of greed. You did this to avoid your most basic, fundamental human responsibility." She paused, her eyes boring into him. "Your petition for divorce on the grounds of infidelity is denied. Your affidavit is hereby being referred to the district attorney's office. You will be charged with felony perjury. Do you understand me?" Victor could only nod, his throat working. "Now," the judge continued, "we turn to Mrs. Sterling's counter-petition. Mrs. Sterling." Elara, who had been standing silently by her children, looked up. "Your counter-petition for divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty, adultery, and attempted fraud is granted, effective immediately. You are a free woman." Elara closed her eyes, and one long, slow tear of pure relief rolled down her cheek. "We move," the judge said, her voice hardening again, "to the division of assets. The community property laws of California would normally dictate a 50-50 split. However, I am finding in this case that such a split would be a gross, unconscionable miscarriage of justice." The judge's voice took on a deliberate, cutting edge. "The law allows for discretion in cases of egregious harm and the deliberate misappropriation of marital funds. Mr. Holloway, your actions, freezing your wife's assets while simultaneously spending, I assume lavishly, on your co-conspirator Ms. Vance, more than qualify. Therefore, she said, looking straight at Victor, I am awarding Mrs. Sterling 70% of all liquid marital assets. This includes all bank accounts, all stocks, all bonds, and all pension funds. 70%! Victor roared, finding his voice in a sudden, desperate surge. That's theft. That's punitive. You can't. It is punitive, Mr. Sterling, the judge thundered back. You used your immense wealth as a weapon to try and financially execute your wife and children. You don't get to complain about the blowback. Furthermore, I am awarding Mrs. Sterling the marital home in Pacific Palisades. You will vacate the premises by 5 p.m. today. I am awarding her the Mercedes G-Wagon and the Range Rover. You may keep your sports cars. You will need them to drive to your new, much smaller apartment. Victor was shaking his head, a gasping sound escaping him. She did nothing for that money. I built that company. I built it all. You are correct, Mr. Sterling, the judge said, her voice becoming dangerously quiet. You did build it, and you were just about to let it be stolen by your most hated rival. All because you were blinded by your own pathological arrogance. You have proven yourself to be a reckless, impulsive, and catastrophic steward of your own legacy. She looked at him with chilling finality. Your children's financial future, their entire lives, cannot be tied to the whims of a man who would commit a felony to save a few dollars. Therefore, I am awarding Mrs. Sterling 50% of your controlling shares in Sterling Global Developments, to be held in trust for Leo and Luna Sterling until they are 25. The blood drained from Victor's face. He understood. This was worse than 70%. This was the kill shot. You just lost control of your own company, Mr. Sterling, the judge stated, her voice devoid of emotion. Your ex-wife is now the single largest shareholder. She is, for all intents and purposes, your new boss. I trust she will have the good sense to call an emergency board meeting and have you removed. Victor made a gagging sound and slumped in his chair, utterly broken. Finally, the judge said, we address the children you so cruelly called props and things. Mrs. Sterling is awarded full sole legal and physical custody of the twins, Leo and Luna Sterling. Your behavior has been monstrous. You denied their existence. You are a clear and present danger to their emotional and physical well-being. Therefore, a permanent restraining order is in effect. You will stay 500 yards away from them and their mother. You will have no contact. If you wish to ever see your children, you will complete a 1-year psychiatric evaluation, 100 hours of court-mandated anger management, and 100 hours of advanced parenting classes. Then you may petition this court for a 30-minute supervised visit. And I assure you, Mr. Sterling, I will be reading that petition very, very closely. As for support, she concluded, you will pay $50,000 per month in child support and $20,000 per month in rehabilitative alimony for 5 years. You will pay for 100% of the children's health insurance and future education. You will also, of course, be paying all of Mrs. Sterling's legal fees, which, given that she is about to hire the best legal team in Los Angeles to countersue you and protect her new majority interest in Vanguard, will be substantial. Gavel, the judge said, rapping it once hard. We are adjourned. The room exploded. Reporters who had been held back burst in, shouting questions. Mr. Sterling, is it true you're sterile? Victor, did you commit perjury? Mr. Sterling, who is Arthur Thorne? This finally broke Victor Sterling. The humiliation, the loss, the utter destruction of his ego. It was too much. With a primal scream he lunged, not at Elara but at the judge's bench. You can't! I'll have you disbarred! I'll ruin you! That's my company! 2 bailiffs tackled him before he'd taken 2 steps, slamming him face first onto the polished floor. He was restrained, a pathetic, screaming, thrashing mess of rage and expensive wool. Elara stood, her whole body trembling with the adrenaline of a battle finally won. Her sister, Chloe, was openly sobbing with relief, her arms wrapped around Elara's. It's over, Elara whispered to her. It's really over. She calmly bent down, checking on the twins. Leo was just starting to wake up, his little fist waving. Luna was still fast asleep. She picked up her old, worn manila envelope from the table. She looked at it, then tossed it into a nearby trash can. She didn't need it anymore. With her sister at her side, she pushed the stroller down the center aisle. She passed the spot where Serafina had been, where the scent of expensive, panicked perfume still hung in the air. She passed the reporters who now turned their cameras and microphones on her. "Mrs. Sterling, how do you feel? What will you do with the company? Elara, you're the richest woman in LA." She ignored them. She reached the back row where Victor was being hauled to his feet by the bailiffs, his $20,000 watch cracked, his suit ripped, his face a mask of spittle and fury. "Amelia!" he screamed, his voice raw and desperate. He thrashed in the bailiff's grip. "Elara, please, don't do this. They're my children. You need me. You can't run a company. Please, I built it. Elara stopped. The entire room, even the reporters, went silent just to hear. She turned her back to the open doors, the flashing cameras of the press framing her like a bizarre, blinding halo. She looked at the man she once loved, the man who had tried to erase her. "You're right, Victor. I don't know how to run a company," she said, her voice quiet but cutting through every other sound in the room. "But unlike you, I'm smart enough to hire people who do, and I'm smart enough to know a liar when I see one. You wanted to erase us," she continued. "You wanted us to be nothing. You wanted to be the only thing that mattered." She nodded at the bailiffs holding him, at the locked door where Serafina had disappeared, at the empty chair where his lawyer had abandoned him. "Now we," she gestured to the stroller, "are everything. We are the legacy. We are the company. We are the future." She held his gaze. "And you, Victor, you are the nothing." She turned and pushed the stroller out into the hallway. She didn't run. She walked. Her sister was beside her. The faint squeak of the cheap stroller wheel was the only sound that followed her until the grand oak doors swung shut, leaving the chaos, the flashing lights, and the broken man behind. Justice isn't always blind. Sometimes it sees every single sordid detail, and today it delivered hard, fast, and complete karma. Victor Sterling lost his company, his reputation, and the family he threw away, all because his pathological arrogance made him forget one truth. The woman you gaslight will always be the one who knows your secrets best. Serafina Vance lost her career, her lover, and her freedom, all for a lie that collapsed under the weight of its own greed. This story is a powerful reminder that material wealth is fragile, but integrity is a fortress. If you were cheering for Elara and her ultimate victory, hit that like button right now. Share this video with someone who needs a daily dose of justice served. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a dramatic story about the underdog's ultimate triumph. Let us know in the comments, was the judge's ruling fair, or did Victor get off easy?